Namaste and welcome to this 10 p.m. show tonight. And we are going to take you on a very, very fascinating journey into our deep antiquity. And there is no better person to take you down that journey than Nilesh Neelkant Oak. Welcome, Nilesh ji. How are you
Namaskar,
doing?
Sanjay ji.
You got a palette right at your back. Is that?
Yes, those are meant to be creative ideas and to remember them before I forget.
Okay, that's a good one. So, of course, I think astronomy has been your mainstay in most of your research, and there are so many mysteries, there are so many motivations related to Indian astronomy, and of course, we also have a full-scale, I should say, full-scale school that is out to denigrate the Indian astronomy as well.
Hmm.
So you are quite fond of Indian astronomy. In fact, you almost take it as some kind of an axiom. Okay, I use that term in a little, a little loosely, of course. So, of course, the beauty of Indian astronomy is that so many things can be scientifically proven using the scientific reasoning and logic and pratyaksha praman, which is supposed to be our main system of proof. But there are a lot of denigrators who say that Indian astronomy is a copy, it's been borrowed, or it's been kind of taken on loan or plagiarized or whatever you may call it. Somebody like Pingree who says that, okay, this is straight from the Greek astronomy.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Right. Before taking on a specific response to what Pingree says, my interest is in astronomy in general. And so naturally, anyone who is interested in astronomy will naturally be excited about Indian astronomy. Okay, because that's just the nature of astronomy. So I don't even, of course, for this particular purpose, because people are making uh, very baseless claims about this whole Greek to Indian connection. We'll talk about it, but I'm fascinated by astronomy in general. For example, the entire Western European journey, you can say, starting with, let's say, Ptolemy, so more than 2000 years ago, and then the whole dark period in between, but then Copernicus, Tycho Brahe, Kepler, Galileo, Newton, Lagrange, many more, like Maxwell in between, then Einstein, the whole quantum mechanics. This is all connected to astronomy. Not many people realize that. So the entire history of the modern science, forget modern astronomy, is really very closely tied to astronomy, the history of modern science. So that's number one. All the big names that you will see, in one way or the another, they were connected with astronomy. These some of the problems, challenges that came from astronomy, and all the, I shouldn't say all, and most, say, like evolution would be a different story, for example, or medicine would be a different story. But in terms of the hard sciences, much of the advances of what is the philosophy of science, it actually came from because of the study of astronomy. So my interest is universal as far as the astronomy goes. Now to your question. So David Pingree, he passed away many years ago now. He was a professor, and you'll like his title. He was at Brown University, one of the Ivy League school, and his title was called Professor of Exact Sciences. Okay, so
No.
oh yeah, fancy, very fancy title. My introduction to him came through his claim, which further was repeated by Michael Witzel of Harvard, about the
Okay.
Kritika's rising due east.
The
Okay.
linguist.
Hmm. Well, yeah, and so Witzel is clueless about astronomy. I mean, this is not putting him down. This is just stating the facts. Clueless about astronomy, but that is not his objective. His objective is he has a certain agenda, and to push the agenda whichever way it can be pushed, whether through linguistics or astronomy or whatever. So he used to publish, and he still may publish, EJ, Electronic Journal of Vedic Studies or something. And there he published something, and I said, my God, I mean, I couldn't even read that article. Okay. And he was quoting Pingree and so on. So I just, out of curiosity, this is many years ago, I said, let me read the original. And it just was surprising. In fact, I wrote 4 blogs on that Kritika Rising East, but will not go there. So now you said David Pingree made that claim that essentially Indian astronomy is nothing but a borrowing from Greek astronomy. Not only that, to an extent, he went further. And he said, essentially, Indian astronomy is a very inferior version of Greek astronomy. So not only that they just borrowed wholesale, but maybe they missed, because if they're copying something, they may not have understood something while copying, and therefore they missed it. When we actually get into the truth of it, you will find the truth is exactly opposite, 180-degree opposite. And
Mhm.
so, what can lead somebody to that kind of conclusion? Now, I have not met Professor David Pingree, and I have read most of his papers. Even his whole PhD thesis, by the way, was to show how Indian astronomy came from Greek astronomy. And so once they write the thesis, many people will work in science, but they don't understand how science works, which is to say, when the evidence comes against a certain theory, one has to accept one's theory to be wrong. There is no shame in doing that. But you will find, although it does happen in science, you will find people's egos get bigger than their theories or than their claims, and they never come to terms in accepting it. So what is my take on this? Actually, we have to show this, because there is a khandan and a mandan. So first thing I'm saying, that claim is extremely naive, extremely juvenile claim. And the truth is 180-degree opposite of it. Now when I say opposite, I don't mean to say actually that they just Greek astronomy just took Indian astronomy. Frankly, I don't know what happened. But no, they did not take the whole Indian astronomy. Even if they were inspired by Indian astronomy, this could be either they developed whatever they developed independently, or the inspiration for their work came through many middlemen, to the extent the original Indian astronomy was, or the ingenuity, creativeness of Indian astronomy was lost to them by the time it reached them.
Right. So that is one claim about the uh, Greek origins. And there is another claim that says that, okay, if you don't accept Greek origin theory, then you will have to bloody well accept the Babylonian origin theory.
Yes, yes. Now the Babylonian case. So let's understand. Many people, people will just use some fancy words, Babylonian, and people, even truly, many people don't know what they're referring to as a Babylonian. So just as a timing wise, and this is based on the so-called the academic consensus. So even we just using that, okay? I mean, in reality, could be very different. So what is Babylonia? Basically, it's Iraq in a simple language. Okay, Iraq and the broader area outside it. And then there are many names. For example, you hear Babylonian, then you hear Sumerian. Well, it is everything happening in that area only. It is like different time layers of it. So, for example, when we talk of Harappa civilization, and people very naively, again in a juvenile fashion, they say, oh, so what's the connection of Harappa civilization with Vedic civilization? What's the connection of Sindhu civilization with Vedic civilization? What is the connection of Ganga civilization with Vedic civilization? It's the same civilization. It depends on how you choose to name it. Now, the Western style of archaeology was when they found something. So let's say they were digging in Jaipur and they found some old artifacts in Jaipur at certain layer, and that's say dated to 3000 BC. What is that? That's Indian civilization, but they are going to call it Jaipur civilization. That's how they name it. right? So that's why Babylonian, and then Mesopotamian, which is what? Mesopotamia is the land between two rivers, Tigris and Euphrates, right? So Mesopotamia, Sumerian. So once we understand that, so Babylonian is kind of rather older. They're talking of very same parallel with the Mahabharata times, like from 5-6 millennium BC to later. Then Sumerians would be, they might put it at 2000, 3000 BC. I mean, these are very softly defined periods. That's all good. A lot of stuff was happening. To be fair to Babylonian astronomy, and Sanjay ji, I mentioned that my interest in astronomy is worldwide. It's not just specific to Indian astronomy. And I am studying this at least for 25, 30 years. And still I have to find the exact precise documents on Babylonian astronomy. Ditto for Greek astronomy, by the way. So, for example, if you talk of Indian astronomy, we will talk about Aryabhatiya, we will talk about Surya Siddhanta, we will talk about many other Siddhanta, Brahma Siddhanta, Vasishta Siddhanta. Some of them are lost. All our ancient narratives are filled with astronomy. Sometimes very heavy, sometimes not so heavy. Then in the later times, we have Brahma Gupta, we have Ganesh Daivadnya, we have Madhava. I mean, many of the whole Kerala astronomy. Very recent times, like 400 years you go back, and then we have Nilkanta Chaturdhar, Nilkanta Somayaji, and so on. Just going back 125 years, we have very illustrious astronomers. I mean, S.B. Dixit, Lele Shastri, Lokmanya Tilak, one of the archaeoastronomer. I mean, I can just go and take V.B. Ketkar. I mean, V.B. Ketkar had not only predicted, this is how many people know this, and you tell me, Sanjay, if you knew it. He had predicted the orbital, how far it would be, and what would be the orbital period for the ninth planet and a 10th planet based on the previous planets. Now, not many people
Okay.
know about this, right? And this was he has done, like, many, long time ago. My point is, it's a whereas we have such a rich text in Indian astronomy. If we have to go to Greek astronomy, what is their text? I mean, it's the Almagest, for example, Ptolemy's Almagest. Now, you can very well say that that came from Egypt rather than it is a Greek. They also consider it theirs. Okay. Then you hear a mention of Hipparchus. Like, and we will come to that. Like, if we talk about the precession, then we'll talk about how Hipparchus is credited with the discovery of precession, but I don't want to go there. Similarly, coming to Babylonian, what is the text? Many times these are the clay tablets. Having said that, let me also say something in defense of Babylonian astronomy. Babylonian astronomy is much closer to Indian astronomy. Okay, it is lunisolar in nature. Okay, so it has the lunar year, it has the solar year. They understand, if you have heard the term metonic, which is Laghada cycle, by the way, of Vedanga Jyotisha, of 18 years and 19 years, that 19 years things repeat. A tithi will exactly repeat and match with the solar date, for example, or the cycle of the eclipses, the similar type of eclipse happening at the same place. Definitely you can predict it will happen after 18 years. That is a Laghada cycle. In the West, it is known as a metonic cycle. Just like the Madhava series of Kerala astronomy or Kerala mathematics is called Leibniz series. And that's what they mean by discovery. You can steal things. Okay. If you are a Christian, you are allowed to claim the credit like a patent, and you can give your name, so that's what the discovery is. So Babylonian astronomy does have similar.
It
Yeah.
is actually the doctrine of discovery
Yeah.
that was propounded in 1492,
Hmm.
and a papal bull was issued. So it's
Hmm.
called Bull et cetera,
Hmm.
and it means that any white Christian anywhere,
Hmm.
if he discovers any knowledge or any territory or any people, then he is the owner of all of them.
You
So,
said
so
it very well.
that is the
It-
theory.
exactly. So I'm glad you said that. Correct. So in that fashion, if Greeks want to say this, that they got it, but there is also a problem, which is to say, even the mainstream Christian Europe consider Romans and Greek as pagans for a long time, until like 500, 600 years ago. And when finally they felt their so-called religious organization has matured, but it doesn't have a foundation, they were in a search of a foundation. I mean, one of the byproduct or was that fakery of a Aryan invasion. But I'm saying that's when they pulled in the Romans and Greeks as their predecessors, so to say, for their knowledge. And so suddenly now they started giving importance to Romans and Greek. I mean, out of that, this whole thing came. But Greek and Romans didn't have the zero. I mean, they did not accept zero for a long time. They did not have a place value system. Okay, they did not have a decimal system. How can you do this mathematics? How can you do the mathematics? How can you do the division? And we'll get to the pi value also. But how do you do the mathematics of it? I mean, Einstein is admitted, like all the modern science that was done in last 600 years, it was impossible without the Hindu numerals. But not just the numbers we are talking. Numbers everybody had, but the zero, but not only the zero, but the decimal system, not only the decimal system, but the place value system. They did not have it. I mean, it's a fakery, honestly. And it's Professor C.K. Raju talks a lot about it and
Oh,
shows
yes,
it.
yes, yes. I've done a whole series with Dr. C.K. Raju on Jaipur Dialogues.
Yeah, show with illustration. So quickly to summarize on the Babylonian, there are similarities with Indian astronomy. And based on the evidence that is very rich evidence that's coming from different streams, genetics is one, other Indian narratives is another. Now that we understand the geography of Mahabharata better, last time we did geography of Ramayana times, if you remember.
Right, right.
Now that we understand this better, frankly, Iraq was nothing but, you can say, the part of that greater Bharat. Okay, maybe on the outskirts, possibly like Bhagadatta, but it was part of this, very much in connection with it. So I wouldn't be surprised Babylonians basically borrowing it in some fashion. Okay, but what is the Babylonian text? I mean, people talk about it now. Oh, our Dr. Konrad Elst, I don't know if he talks about Babylonian. I think he does little bit, but he's more on like it came from Greek. And I should tell you, so I mean, we are good friends, and I ask him every time he will bring this up, and I will ask him, so okay, and then he will admit, he said, Nilesh, I am not saying that the everything in Indian astronomy came from Greek, but certain aspects of it. I said, thank you, great, thank you for being specific. Now could you tell me what specific aspects from Greek astronomy came to Indian astronomy? And then he goes silent. This has not happened once, this has happened multiple times. One of the point that they have, Konrad Elst might have said it, but some other folks I have heard, is like the, again, I'm not a linguist, in fact, far from it. So they talk about, I don't know if you have heard somewhere, the kentum versus centum, like, shata as a century versus K, or center of the circle, like we say, versus kendra. So in Hindi, Marathi also we can say the kendra, like a center of a circle, right? Akashwani kendra, something like that, the center. So there is that kendra. I have heard that claim, maybe Konrad said it sometime or somebody else, that kendra came from Greece to India. And I'm telling you, that might have in the linguistics. I'm not a linguistic expert, but if somebody is telling me, somebody is giving me as a proof of Greek astronomy coming to India based on a Kendra, and I don't want to give this secret out. Let's keep this as a mystery and not even discuss it further. But Kendra word comes in the Indian astronomy text, and they mean something very different than Greek ever have imagined or Babylonians have ever imagined. So definitely that word in astronomy did not come from the Greek.
What is that?
Yeah, I wanted to keep that mystery, but you want me to give away the mystery. This is $1 million value.
Oh, yes, and this whole episode is on mysteries, on unraveling the mysteries. You
True,
can't
true,
keep the mysteries. You have to
true.
unravel it.
Well, yeah, no, you caught me there. So the word Kendra, it comes in one place in Surya Siddhanta, and it comes in the sense of error. Now, that is nowhere the meaning of that word anywhere in Greek language or Greek astronomy. Or I could be wrong, but someone has to tell me. The point is, I am going and trying to dig to find out why anybody is even making such a juvenile argument of Greek to Indian astronomy. They will make the argument, and I'm not talking just Konrades. Like, let's go back to David Pingree. I mean, that's where the whole rot began. I mean, his students are still there. When I try to, they are in professor in America. When I try to contact them, they never respond. Can you imagine? They are in academia, because to them that this is enough. By the way, this particular disease is not limited to America. Many of our pro Indic sounding researchers also, by the way, now that's should stay mystery for now anyways. I would tell you, when my research work or research work of Mrs. Rupa Bhattiji or some other work has been brought to some of our pro Indic academic professors, they have said, I will not look at it because it's not in the peer reviewed journal, and I get a kick out of it, but that's another subject. So Kendra means error. That is how it appears in yeah, just one reference. Actually, there could be many, but I am aware of one. It comes in the sense of error, has no resemblance whatsoever the way it is used in Greek language or Greek astronomy.
Yeah. So that's about Kendra and the Greek and Babylonian astronomy. You mentioned Surya Siddhanta, and you base a lot of your findings on Surya Siddhanta. You also place it in deep antiquity. Now, I've seen this, a lot of time, especially on the social media debates. Uh, there is this great confusion about the something in Surya Siddhanta about the precession model. And the Surya Siddhanta, it is argued by some of your very worthy adversaries that this precession model is a to and fro model, like a pendulum.
Yeah.
That the precession occurs not in a smooth, what is called a top-like motion,
Right.
because that is what precession is. I have read in science, and the precession is world over recognized as a movement that takes place in the manner of a top, while it moves around.
Yeah.
At the same time, it also moves a little bit up and down.
Yeah.
So that is the precession, and then if you trace it, then it forms a circle, a very smooth circle, around which the movement takes place. But because I have been trying to figure it out, how it is possible that such a precession can take place in a pendulum-like fashion, or what exactly is the confusion?
Yeah.
Can you please explain it?
Yes, thank you. So okay. So let's start with the Surya Siddhanta, and then we'll come to the opponent that you are referring to. Now, well, I can combine those two. So, for example, to be fair to this so-called opponent, more than likely you are referring to Dr. Jayashree Sarnathan.
Oh yes, she never comes to a debate though. She only
That's
takes
okay. I mean, her
workshops.
choice, right? I mean, everyone, this is voluntary in nature. Many of the people complained, say, so don't be surprised if you get phone calls, people complaining that why are you inviting Nilesh Oak? Okay. And then naturally, what would be your response? You say, "Hey, abhi aa jao," right? You will say, abhi aa jao. Then they say, no, that's not the point. Okay. They don't want to come. They don't want to have a skin in the game.
That's a different kind of fascism, actually.
Yeah. But to be fair to her, so what she's claiming is, I don't want to even go there, but yeah, just to so that our audience understands. So the as a precession, the phenomenon, and by the way, that is also maybe you should ask that question afterwards, because they also, the Western Europe also thinks again the same, likes of David Pingree, and even I don't know if Konrad else say things that way, that even the precession understanding also came from Greek to us. That is also another whole myth going on. But in this one, there is a chapter in Surya Siddhanta, and there are many other things discussed, called Tri Prashnadhikar. Okay, so adhikar is like a what do you say, like a method or method, something like that. And three prashna adhikar, we'll not go into the detail of that. That is the chapter where some shlok, some verses are given in such a fashion, if interpreted in a certain way, they can actually give rise to the interpretation that Dr. Jayashree Saranathan talks about, which is to say it's like a back and forth motion. Like, easy way to explain is the wiper of the car, like, to remove, clean the car glass, of the water, going back and forth with, say, center at some nakshatra, and it can go 27 degree on one side from that nakshatra, come back to the position, go 27 degree on another side. Based on those few verses, it appears that this whole thing will never go beyond a total length of 54 degrees out of 360 degree. Okay, so that's what the impression it gives. That will be a huge
No, but
substitute.
that actually that is it, it is very clear that I think in our entire Pramana Shastra or the epistemology, it is very clear that if a Shabda Praman or a word in the scripture is in conflict with a Pratyaksh Praman or direct evidence, then direct evidence has to prevail.
Correct. Correct. And I'll give you a couple examples of that, what you just said. So Surya Siddhanta was like one of the key Siddhanta in Indian astronomy. So is Aryabhatiya, and there were many others. Like there were 15, 16, 20 that we can at least name them. Now, the later astronomers, what happens in astronomy is that the things appear to be constant for a very long time, but in some sense they are slowly changing. The change is so slow that people don't see the reason to change it, and suddenly one day it shocks them, saying, hey, this is not anymore matching with what is written in the text. And so when, therefore, if you look at Aryabhatiya, even Surya Siddhanta is updated like 1400 years ago. And we'll talk about Surya Siddhanta updates, because that is how we can define its antiquity, going back to like more than 16,000 years, even more than 26,000 years, more than 40,000 years possibly. Now people really choke, emotionally choke and fall off their chairs if you talk of 12,000 years. Forget about 26,000 years and 40,000 years. But as you said, the pratyaksha evidence is there. I mean, either you have to explain in some other fashion or you have to accept it. But my point is, the likes of Brahmagupta, Bhaskaracharya, Ganesh Daivadnya, Lele Shastri, S.B. Dikshit, they all are emphasizing, even in the religious fashion, I would say religious in the sense of a ritual, they are saying, if your Ganit, like if your Surya Siddhanta Ganit gives you a certain number, say for a certain tithi or a certain time and certain position, and your Druka Pratyay, meaning what you see actually in the sky, it deviates from it, you have to accept the one what you see actually in the sky.
Quite right. That is a Pratyaksha Praman.
Pratyaksha Praman. And all of these, like Brahmagupta, Bhaskaracharya, even whoever was updating Surya Siddhanta 1400 years ago, Aryabhatiya around that same time, they have always looked at the astronomy parameters, which over a period of time they need to be calibrated and reintroduced into the text. So Bhaskaracharya did that. I mean, that's why you can see the orbital periods of planets are different than Surya Siddhanta versus Bhaskaracharya versus Aryabhatiya versus what we see today with the modern astronomy. And they are very, very consistent. So back to this. So now there is a sufficient evidence in our all ancient Indian narratives, including Surya Siddhanta, to say that this interpretation of Jayashree Saranathan is decisively false. So what might have happened? I don't know the answer. I'm going to only speculate that possibly some of the additional verses that might be there in that chapter on Tri Prashnadhikar, it might be trying to say something different. And I have my own theory. I mean, it's a conjecture and I'm not very interested in it. But sometime once I write a paper or something, we'll discuss that. Like why the motion might be perceived like this. And it might be explained in some other context, not the regular precession of the equinoxes, which indeed goes through a complete circle. But some of the verses might be lost. Therefore, that connection might be lost. And now someone, for example, Jayashree Saranathan, and she's not the only one possibly, but the evidence in the Surya Siddhanta itself, then Mahabharata, Ramayana, but all our Brahmanas, Samvitas, all other astronomy texts is more than sufficient to convince us that it is not this back and forth. Because if it is back and forth, then basically what we are saying right now is, see, right now it is the point of spring equinox is around Uttara Bhadrapada right now. Okay, and so how far back it can go? So do you know what Jayasri Saranathan is saying? So it will go for another like 1,000 years, or I forgot now, another we are at 2100, not 1,000 years, another 300 years or 200 years. It will go up to say further point to Purva Bhadrapada, and it should start return. I mean, instead of going in a circle, it should come back. And how far back it needs to go? By her calculation itself, it will not even reach Kritika, because it has to be 27 plus minus. Now we have Kritika as a first nakshatra. We have a Mrugashirsha Ardra as a first nakshatra, meaning the spring equinox. We have a series of nakshatras mentioned as a first nakshatra. So her theory is just instantaneously falsified. But if she's enjoying it, I mean, I honestly don't think it's worth my time to spend arguing with her. And she doesn't want to argue. I mean, she has made her mind. Now she thinks all that needs to be done is to justify it. Even she says the same thing about Mahabharat war. In her mind, the Mahabharat war is decided. It is decided long time ago. Our job is to find the evidence by hook or crook and justify it. That is our job, as she sees it.
Okay, so that is that. And of course, you mentioned a lot of luminaries. You mentioned uh, uh, you mentioned S.V. Dikshit, you mentioned Rupa Bhati, you mentioned Lokmanya Tilak, you mentioned Dr. Anil Narayanan, all these luminaries who are demonstrating antiquity, precision, and accuracy.
Yes.
So, just one little question that comes to our mind, and of course, it includes you as well.
Yeah.
What exactly is the motivation? Why do you want to take it back so much back into the antiquity?
Okay, so why do we want to take it back? I mean, that is a motivation not just for astronomy, that is just a motivation for us to understand our history. And why do we want to understand our history? I mean, is it just because many people think, I mean, Conrad calls me high chronology enthusiast.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and no, I like it. I mean, I told him, I mean, we have met in person and we even had dinner together. And when he said, what do you call high chronology enthusiast? I said, I love that. This, I mean, not just limiting to Conrad, because many others think like that. And they think this is some kind of agenda or some kind of childish obsession. No, this is, I mean, they will not believe it. I don't think they can comprehend this. This has nothing to do with any obsession. This has nothing to do with any childish agenda. In fact, when I was studying this and when I heard some of the dates, like say, for a minute, take 5,000 BC and 7,000 BC and 8,000 BC, 10,000 BC, 19,000 BC, I was shocked. And the reason I was shocked is my colonial education. I'm saying, what are they talking? I mean, we are talking of the whole civilization beginning in like a 3,000 BC, and somebody is talking of 7,000 BC. Like change correction to Surya Siddhanta in 7,000 BC. See, these guys are so great. For example, I just want to take a small digression. S.B. Dikshit, more than 125, 130, 140 years ago, he explained one phenomenon, just doing the hand calculation for the Rohini Shakata Bhed, like when Saturn would do it. Okay, and he showed that basically if it happens based on the calculations, it can only happen before 5000 BCE. This he has said 130-40 years ago. Now, why this is fascinating, I'll tell you. Until like I started researching this maybe 15 years ago or so, and very recently my good friend Ameya Modak, he presented in the Waves conference a paper on that. Everyone around the world who is familiar with the Rohini Shakata Bhed, which is to say Saturn or Mars coming into the Shakata of a Rohini, those 5-star combination, including the TIFR folks and everyone, they were saying, yes, Mars can do it, but Saturn cannot do it. Now, why this is important? Now, I'm just telling you this antiquity is not for the heck of antiquity. Antiquity is trying to understand the precision, the sophistication, and I'll come to motivation, the motivation of Indian astronomy into that deep antiquity. So, what Shankar Balakrishna Dixit, in a simple language for our audience, he said a certain astronomy phenomenon described in our ancient Indian text is only possible before 5000 BCE. And until my work and until Ameya Modak's work in the last 10 years, nobody, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in, they have the data. They just don't know that the data shows that, by the way. The software or the TIFR folks, nobody, I mean, they are on record saying Saturn cannot do it. By the way, this reference has been used by many of our deracinated leftist, rightist kind of, leftist side of the researchers to show how trivial is Indian astronomy. Now it is proved that actually Saturn also does it, and we have shown when it does it. So now think of it. Saturn does it the first time it does it, if you go backward, is say 8000 BCE. For last 8000 years or 5000 or 3000 years, that everyone on the earth is believing that this is impossible and this is some gobbledygook that is being inserted in ancient Indian text. And now with the help of modern astronomy data, we can show that that is the case. This has nothing to do with high chronology enthusiasm. This has to do with putting the truth as it is. Okay, so that is one motivation. But when you ask the question on motivation, I want to say something else. Why Indian astronomy is that precise and accurate? I mean, they are defining that principle like this. And I would say one of the reason is, if you might have seen that chart of the GDP, Angus Madison research work going back to 2000 years. Like, it starts like a trail. Now it is doing better, but then you come to the British Times and it's really, they sucked India dry in terms of its wealth, industry, the patented rights, you can say. Then you can see the effect beginning 1000 AD or so, the whole effect of Islamic invasion. Islamic invasions, they did take the wealth out, and even when they did not take it out, they just consumed it, did not invest into anything else. But if you go beyond that 1000, you see, by the time you go to 2000 years, India is the number one for GDP, and India and China making like a 50% plus. Okay, now we don't have a data going backwards, but my point is the prosperity. Why India was so prosperous, why Columbus wanted to come to India, and why Vasco da Gama wanted to come to India. The reason is the prosperity. Where did that prosperity came from? It came from agriculture. It came from medicine, like think of Ayurveda, but other stuff. It came from metallurgy. Okay. It came from commerce. It came from navigation. And if you, including Ayurveda medicine, if you bring it all together, agriculture meaning the prediction of season, prediction of monsoon, when to harvest, when to sow the seeds. Navigation is, just imagine, now we take it for granted. You are going on the ocean in a boat. You don't see land anywhere. It's all ocean. There is no difference. You don't have a way to distinguish other than the star positions and knowing a perfect timing when you are seeing which star and therefore what is your location. So that was the motivation, not only for having some rudimentary astronomy, but very precise astronomy. That's why, Surya Siddhanta or Aryabhatiya, so casually they discuss the southern hemisphere. So casually, to them it's not an alien land. When they talk of the southern hemisphere, it's not an alien land to them. When they talk in terms of astronomy, it is precisely because of that, to the extent the central, you can say, the Indian observatory, ancient observatory, is in a way Lanka. I mean, it's in many other places, but it is in Lanka. So that's the motivation. And what was the other point? Sorry, I forgot. But that is the motivation for the Indian astronomy, the prosperity.
Okay, so there is some, I should say, other points that I would like to ask you.
Okay.
Because we see in the Indian astronomy, that when they say that, okay, they're borrowed from Greece or they're borrowed from Babylon, and they have the zodiacal signs and all that. But in the Indian system, we don't seem to, we go back to Mahabharata and beyond, we don't seem to find any mention of the Rashis. We
Hmm.
only talk about nakshatras and not about Rashis.
Hmm.
So, does that prove your theory that it is indigenous and not borrowed from Greece or Babylon?
Uh, okay, no, good, great question. No, I wouldn't say that by itself proves one thing or the another. I'll give you some examples of it. For example, if anybody in the old times, of course, we are thinking where people are not spending time watching TV. It's a sky is a wonderful thing to watch. I mean, just see the dynamics of it at night and
No,
daytime.
I know that because I was a sailor, and one of
You are
my
a marine, yes,
pastime, yes, I was a marine
right?
engineer. So
Yeah, how
a
beautiful.
lot of times I just used to go and hang around on the top deck and
Hmm,
just watch the magnificence of night sky. And you can't get
correct,
it purer, and you
correct.
can't get it clearer than
Right.
being on the sea.
Right. So that dance going on. However, why something is included in a certain text and why something is not included, we can only talk of what we know. We can speculate why that might have happened, but I think that's about it. So my point was the first thing anybody is going to notice in the sky is while most of the stars are stable in their places, they show up the next day after 24 hours, more or less the same place with slight changes. The most noticeable thing is the planets because they are changing places. Like Greek called them wanderer. We called graha in the sense of something that grasp. They can grasp another star and conjunction. The point is, you look at Rigveda. Now, any person writing would have noticed the planets, but Rigveda directly does not mention planets. So I'm saying why Rigveda does not have planets is a very interesting question to ask. I don't know the answer. Similarly, what you just said is very true, that entire Mahabharata, entire Ramayana has a wonderful astronomy, very precise astronomy. In fact, that's what I used to determine their dating, as you know. But there is no mention of a Rashi. In fact, the Rashis are so absent that anytime if the Rashi, meaning the Mesh, Vrishabh, Mithun, Karka, Simva, Kanya, or the whatever the English you say, if those show up, then we know that almost 99% confidence that those particular shloka or verses are interpolated. Interpolated in the sense of some later commentator, very in a recent times, whatever that recent is, could be still thousands of years ago, when he or she was writing it, they were interpreting in the language of a Rashi. Okay, so let me come to the Rashi. Now, this is also another argument, by the way, made not so much in my support, but in made in the support of a Greek or Babylonian. They will say this Rashi is not there in Mahabharata, it's not there in Ramayana, it is not there in the Rigveda, so nakshatras are there. But West also has a Rashi, but they don't have so much the nakshatra. Okay, the whatever little astronomy they have the Rashi, the 12 zodiac. So therefore it came from here. And my point is, again, it might have come from there, but as far as the empirical, objectively testable evidence is concerned, there is none. There is zilch to tell us that it came from there to here. Now, where do we see this Rashi? Quickly, I'll mention that point. Parashar Hora Shastra, the text on astrology, mentions Rashi. For example, of course, Surya Siddhanta mentions Rashi, Mesh Vrishabh, and Aryabhati also mentions it. So at some point they entered. So maybe they are definitely there in a Siddhanta text, but they were not there into Vedanga Jyotisha text, like Vedanga Jyotisha may not have it. Because it's only nakshatra. Rigveda doesn't have it, Ramayana doesn't have it, Mahabharata doesn't have it. So it might have existed in parallel, but just like Rigveda does not have planets, although planets is something hard to miss, there could be their own reasons. I don't know what they are, and maybe therefore they are not there into our old text.
Okay. This is also the something about the 27 nakshatra and 28 nakshatra that we talk about.
Hmm.
We say that okay, uh, it's one of the Chandrama's brides got lost or something. What is that story?
Dr. Raj Vedam tells that story. He likes to tell that story, and it is there in our Puranas. It is there in the Mahabharata also. It comes all the time. So, like Chandra is, so metaphorically it is visualized as moon and his 27 wives, so forget 28 for a minute, but 27 wives. And everyone complains, all the other nakshatra complains, the wives complain that Chandra preferably or preferentially spends more time with Rohini and doesn't spend enough time. So these are all 27 are Daksha Kanya, the daughters of Daksha. So they go to Daksha, and the place that is mentioned is Pushkar, by the way, the Brahma's place. Brahma curses them and so on. This is a astronomy metaphor to possibly explain a certain epoch, certain time when that was more happening. And I think Rajvedam ji has given a good lecture on that. I'll not go there. But because you mentioned 27 and 28, in fact, the very fact at some time during our civilization, we tend to use 28 nakshatras. At other times, we go back to 27, and again we come back to 28. That itself is a sufficient evidence for this precession of the Earth's axis, which goes through a complete cycle of about 26,000 years, and that it doesn't go back and forth. I mean, there is so much evidence for the precession of the Earth's axis or the precession of equinoxes in Indian ancient narratives. It's mind-boggling. I mean, we can talk about that for a few days, just the evidence for the precession. And you did not ask the question, but let me also mention a quick point on this. Again, even on that point, and I think Konrad Elst might have said something. Now, I don't want to put any words in his mouth that he might not have said, but something of the effect that to the whole world, the precession was not known until Hipparchus. And Hipparchus is credited with, say, 100 CE or 100 BC, somewhere 2000 years ago approximately, that he discovered. Again, remember the word discovered.
Discover, yes. Whenever this term discover comes, I get very apprehensive. And I
Right.
almost always know when they say discover, that means it is stolen.
Correct. And the way he did it, the number he assigned, for example, right now what we say 1 degree change happens in 72 years. He assigned 1 degree change happens in 100 years. So maybe he made either an erroneous observation, or to camouflage that he is copying, he might have added 100 years. I mean, anything is possible, honestly. So that also shows that it wasn't a very precise observation. But if somebody is saying on the world stage of astronomy, Hipparchus is the first one who identified the precession of equinoxes, I mean, the statement doesn't get any more childish than this. I mean, the people have to study Babylonian astronomy, whatever the remaining is there. But Indian astronomy is super rich. Now, let's quickly make a one short distinction. When we are talking of precession of the Earth's axis, one thing is, did people know the phenomenon, like the observed phenomenon? That is one question. Second one is, did they know what was causing it? Now, the second part, there is a difference. The first part, Indians definitely knew it. Indians knew it for 30, 40, 50,000 years. I'm on here. I mean, this is being recorded. I'm on the record to say that. Okay.
So you're putting your neck on the chopping block.
Yeah. And Egyptians also knew it, by the way. I mean, Egyptians, in a very somewhat indirect statement, but they are talking of 72,000 plus years of timing, using the precession as a mode. So when they're talking, what is this Hipparchus talking, just first timing, discovering in this time? So that's one. But as to the cause of the precession, honestly, it's, again, people feel so hyped with a science sometime. After Newton, the phenomenon of precession was known, but after Newton with the gravity, they came up with a gravitational model of precession. And those people who are infatuated with the gravitational model of precession, I mean, that is the only working model we have. It doesn't explain everything, doesn't predict everything. I would encourage people to read the book called The Lost Star, okay, by I'm not getting the name right now. It is also based on little work of Sri Yukteswar Giri, okay, about the two star theory and so on. But they can read The Lost Star only to see the limitations of gravitational theory of precession. I just didn't want to go there. I wanted to say that there are two parts. One is knowing the phenomenon, like a physical visualization. Another is the causality. The knowing, Indians definitely know for a long time. We don't know, and I am not claiming that Indians astronomers necessarily knew what causes that. I'm not saying that Indians necessarily knew it. They might have known, they may not have known.
Okay. That's quite interesting. And well, let's ask you the last question.
Okay.
Last questions are okay. Let me go into the utility aspect of it. So, what are the different areas of Indian civilization where you think astronomy is of critical importance, and what are its unique contributions
Hmm.
of Indian astronomy to
Okay.
the world astronomy? So, two-part question.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, this is a huge question too. Let me give you a glimpse of it. The first contribution of Indian astronomy is to the agriculture. In the case of India, it is the agriculture. So for that, we need to know season. India had that monsoon season, which possibly started based on the geology, climatology research, but based on also the references in Rigveda, by the way. It appears that around 26,000 BC. Now, this is an estimate. This could be back and forth. When the monsoon started, and then it took a while before it became a stable cycle, and possibly for last 17 18,000, maybe 20,000 years the monsoon cycle is stable. I mean, it has gone through ups and downs, but the monsoon happens, the intensity might have changed. So the one big contribution of Indian astronomy is to that prediction of the season, prediction of the monsoon, beginning of a monsoon rain, stopping of a monsoon rain, and therefore on a agriculture. The second biggest is I mean, there can be many, but second biggest I think is the navigation. So now you are producing this lot of stuff, and part of the wealth is of course the production, but also the commerce, and the commerce through the boats and to the other places. And for navigation you need extremely precise and accurate astronomy. Because Western Europe did not have it. It's amazing if you go and look at the records, how many people they lost to the sea, how much wealth and how many boats they lost to the sea because of not having a good astronomy to predict the weather and weather patterns, but also in terms of navigation. What you find, so now in terms of a contribution to the world, before Western Europe became familiar with Indian astronomy, to them, so therefore, actually, Newtons are also discoveries, huh, Sanjay ji? The discovery, Newtons are also discoveries to them.
Oh
So
yeah, I know.
this is the contribution.
He also discovered superlinear time, from the
Right.
church.
Right, right. So what happened is, until then, like Ptolemy's astronomy, if you take, and then the astronomy, essentially Ptolemy's astronomy that was used for 1400 years, what they were doing, they had this concept of epicycle, again possibly borrowed. Okay, but every time their prediction went wrong, and it went wrong all the time, they added another jugad, another what you call stopgap solution. Okay, another patchwork. So by the time Copernicus, there were 70 epicycles, 70 plus epicycles to just explain the positions, movement of like 5 to 7 celestial bodies, the 5 visible planets and moon and the sun. Okay, now that's why I'm saying compare that to the Indian astronomy. Long before, I mean, we are not talking 2000 years. So as Indian astronomy formulas for the equation of the sun, it's most accurate 7500 years ago, the timing of Mahabharata. Okay, the most accurate measurements down to the arc minutes and possibly arc seconds are taken for the nakshatra positions of latitude. I mean, nakshatra latitudes more than 7005, I mean 7500 BCE or 7800, 8000 BCE, which is what is that, 10,000 years ago, 9 to 10,000 years ago. The most precise measurements of the latitude measurements of the nakshatras were done, and they are there in our today's Surya Siddhanta. In fact, we can go back. So why they were looking for such a precise thing? They are also mapping the pole stars in the both direction. So I'm saying that is one. But the biggest contribution, just like the decimal place or a place value, is that while until they came in, Western Europe came in contact with Indian astronomy, to them, astronomical predictions were done using geometry, using triangles and measurements and chords and whatnot. Okay. It is the Indian astronomy that made them aware that you can write the formulae. And Surya Siddhanta has the formulae. and so is Aryabhatiya, and so are the other texts. You can write the formulae, and the formulae can be plugged in with appropriate constants to predict the positions of the planet or star or whatever it is. That is the one of the biggest contribution. The other, so it's the last question. The other thing you might hear in West also, I mean, in India, me growing up, and you're also a engineering person, uh, yeah, the pi value was there, but there was not so much a big hoopla around the pi like it is done in the West. Like my daughter will come home, like in a middle schools and early, like, Dad, can you tell the precise value of pi to like 7 decimal places or something like this? And I say, what about it? Like I told her, we just use 22 divided by 7. If you remember, most of the formula would be 22 divided by 7. The problem is, again, Professor C.K. Raju explains very well that they looked at mathematics as the perfect thing, and they looked at the
I
astronomy,
know, yes.
right? This
Mathesis.
is, and by the way, do you know where that mathesis comes from? So mathematics was like a
That
buddhi,
comes from Greece.
Greece, but you have to go further back to trace it to even Sanskrit. Now they call it pi, medha, medha nadi, like an intellect. It's an intellect, it's a knowledge, it's a jnana that becomes mathesis, that becomes mathematics. That's a different subject. So they were looking for artificial perfectness. The other contribution of Indian astronomy, and there are many, but I'll stop with this one. We already went over close to our, is that Indian, not only astronomy, but astronomy is a good example, but Indian sciences, whether it's agriculture or whether it is Ayurveda, it is it is not dogmatic. It is extremely modest. It's extremely practical. It is extremely pragmatic. And just I'll give you an example using the value of a pi. Whereas they make a big deal here, like how many precise places, how many decimal places, Indians never had this stupid obsession. You need to know something precise to the extent your problem demands, your answer demands,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. Yes.
Right. So somewhere it is using square root of 10. Like 3 point something is enough, but definitely not 4, and definitely on the lower side, meaning close to 3, slightly higher than 3 was sufficient. So you will find many formulas. Say, for example, Surya Siddhanta has it, many other text has it. So it is a square root of 10. But if you look at, say, Aryabhatiya, in one place it gives exactly 3.1413 or something like this. Even more precise formula is given in Surya Siddhanta in another place. And now I don't want to go into that, but it's some very ingenious, very intricate, very curious, and very, I would say, a beautiful creation of Indian astronomy is in that number, what they call celestial radius in astronomy. And that number, that radius, is equal to 3438. And it looks like a very odd, awkward number, but in that number is the precise value of a pi as well. And by the way, now again, your marine background, see, for example, nautical mile. The
Yeah.
nautical mile was decided by astronomy. It is not the distance on the ground first. It was for a captain of the boat, to his ability to detect a change in the distance, like with a naked eye, that they have made a significant change, they have traveled significant distance on the ocean when you don't have any other reference point. That defined, therefore, the nautical mile at the equator, so to say, or average, you can say, was defined as 21,600 nautical miles as the circumference of the earth. Where does that 21,600 comes from? 2 pi r. 2 times pi, let's leave pi as a pi because we know the nautical miles is 21,600, times 3438, the celestial radius of Indian astronomy. And why 21,600, Sanjay ji? Because to a naked eye, the naked eye resolution to note two objects in the sky as two separate objects is 1 arc minute. And 1 arc minute is essentially 24 hours times 15 degree per hour times 60 arc minutes. So it's so beautiful that you look at the object in the sky, you note the change in the position of the object, you plug that into the formula, and you know exactly where you are, how far distance you have traveled. In comparison, if you go to Greek astronomy, it was extremely cumbersome. Instead of 3438, they used the number 60, and it
How
was
would you, in Greek astronomy, how would you even multiply for that
there.
matter?
You go, and then there you go, and then they use the
Using an
number.
abacus. You couldn't do navigation using an abacus.
Correct. So that's why they were not doing it much. I mean, I didn't show you the slide. In fifth, when India is talking, the Surya Siddhanta is talking about the spherical Earth going back thousands of years ago. I'm talking 16,000, 12,000 years. In 5th century BCE, Anaximander is drawing a flat Earth, and Anaximander is considered a great name in Greek astronomy or Greek science. In 5th century BCE, to only 2,500 years ago, he is drawing everything as a flat Earth. I mean, it's a circular. The ocean is surrounding everywhere, and then they have like a what you say. Yeah, I don't want to show the map, but they have the Europe or the Greece. They have a Libya and Asia. Those are the three things they knew, and they are in a flat Earth model. So, but we can stop there. We already went over an hour.
Yes, we are over an hour, of course, but then Bhugol is mentioned even in the Rig Veda. So there
Yeah,
we have it.
yeah, and Vishnu Puran everywhere. Yes.
Okay, so that was a wonderful exposition, as usual, from Nilesh Oak. I don't find many questions, so that only indicates two things. Either you understand everything or
Very
you
good.
haven't understood anything.
I,
So
there are no questions whatsoever. That is perfect. That will be a first time, I
no,
would say.
there are, but very few
Okay,
compared to
okay.
the normal questions that you get. This one seems to be having
Very good.
very
Okay.
few questions. Anyway, so let me make my customary appeal to my viewers to please like the video, share it around, to subscribe to the channel, and of course to honor us with any contributions that you might love to make. Patram Pushpam, as we say. And let's move to the questions and answers now. Shri Rang, thank you for inviting Professor Nilesh Oak. So you are now a professor, and this wonderful discussion.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Sri Rangji.
Next. JSK, sir. JSK? What's JSK? Jai Shri Krishna. Okay.
Jai Sri Krishna, sir. Okay, okay. Yeah. I was thinking it's not you, it's not me.
Okay. JSR is very common.
Yes.
JSK is not that common. Uh, JSK is Thoughts and Temples of Vedic Planetarium coming up in Mayapur.
Okay. Yeah, my thoughts are, do you want to add anything, Sanjay ji, before I go on this Mayapur Planetarium?
No, no, I don't have any much on this.
Okay. So the saffron blue G, I'll mention. The last time I was in Mayapur, very long time ago, 1991, and right that time, the whole Prabhupada place was coming up, and that time they had a plans. I remember that. In fact, I my association is also, or was whatever you want to call it, is with Bhaktivedanta Institute for a long time. Almost those many years, or actually longer than that, close to 35 years. So I have met Sadaputa Dasa, Richard Thompson. Of course, I know Rasraj Prabhu. I mean, he's my inspiration. Ravi Gomatam, if you know, he's my inspiration. I mean, I learned a lot of things from him. Kapil Deva Prabhu and Claudio. So many others. My quick thoughts on the Mayapur planetarium is that it's an interesting concept. I do feel that the one who are proposing the planetarium, they are taking the descriptions of the cosmos from Srimad Bhagavad Puran literally, and then trying to represent it. And I don't think, just like we discussed today, three Prashnadhikar from Surya Siddhanta, maybe some verses were missing in Surya Siddhanta, and that's why somebody may take a erroneous interpretation like that viper-like back and forth motion. What might have been meant by the cosmic map. For example, right now our Earth is round, but if you go to a textbook and open the map or even on our Google, like short one, it's a rectangular map or it's a straight map that we see as if there is no circular thing. Something like that was explained. And even I'm not getting the name quickly. Somebody has very explained it nicely, because it's a map. And you may because before, we the way we had a grantha, we would fold it. So one you fold from this side, another from this side, another from this side, and this side. And therefore it may be seen, because in Bhagavad Puran it describes like that. The main, like a central, is like a Aryavarta or Jambudvip. And then it says the petal, one petal here, one petal here, one petal here, and one petal here. It's simply a physical map. It could be a physical map, and it's not me, somebody else, a good astronomer, has explained it, that that is what it meant. And it was called a varsha. So for example, like Sanjayji, just like we call the continents, it will be called this continent, that continent, varsha. And sometimes that varsha has been confused, what the varsha as a region. So what are my thoughts? My thoughts are that, uh, with all due respect to them, and they are putting a lot of investment money and doing it, it could be a simplistic and therefore bit of a misrepresented representation of what the Bhagavad Puran is trying to say. And if there is a way for you to reach them, I would say that they should definitely give a thought to this aspect in before they design it.
Right. Next one. Chitragupta, does Indian astrology use any concepts from Yavana Jataka and Romaka Siddhanta?
Okay, great question. Actually, Indian, see, what is so Yavan, these are Yavana Jataka or Roman Siddhanta are astronomy text, and astronomy forms the foundation, so that the correct positions of the planets and everything can be predicted, which is used in astronomy. The point is, you hear the word Yavana Jatak, that is again our, I mean, not Chitragupta ji, you, that is a problem for many. I mean, recently, like Srikant Talagiri ji has written an article about me. Konrad Elsg also does the same thing. As soon as they hear the word Romak, they hear the word Yavan. The Romak to them is Romans, and Yavan to them is Greece. That is absolutely ill-founded. These Romaka as a place is mentioned like towards the south of India. Now tell me about that. Like, is Roman to the Rome to the south of it? No, maybe more than likely those people were doing business with Roman world, and therefore they might have a colony, maybe something, and that's why it was called Roma. Possibility, I'm speculating. The Yavana is the word always referred in the sense of a mlencha, like the people who are on the outskirts of the mainstream Hindu civilization at any point. So Yavanas was used, say in Shivaji's time, Yavana was used to the Mughals. So when somebody was attacking from Delhi, they were called Yavanas are coming. Now, they are not Greek by any stretch of imagination. So, this is an extremely juvenile false understanding that has unfortunately percolated for last, I don't know how many years, at least usually say 150, 200 years. And we must overcome this. Yavana does not mean Greece. It may or might have meant Greece at certain point. But the word was used for many. Romaka was a place that is described to the south of India, southern part of India. It's not referring to that Rome. It might have a connection. So the answer to answer your question, yes, the concepts will be used, but Yavana Jataka, Romaka Siddhanta is very much Indian text, Indian Siddhanta.
Right. Next one. Abhishek Agnihotri. Nilesh ji, actually, I wanted to ask you, do you use any specific software for going back in astronomy, like 10K or 100K years? And about the river morphology, or you just keep an eye on the papers published around the globe? Actually, I'm kind of working on some things, could help regarding that.
Okay, quickly the answer on the software. I use many softwares, multiple softwares. I also, when required, not just out of fun, but when required or to validate, I also do manual calculations when something is very critical. But just to answer your question, I'll tell you many softwares. You can use any, just be aware of their limitation. My favorite software is Voyager by Karina Soft. And as for the river morphology, no, I don't have any software that gives the river morphology. It will not. You actually need a physical empirical data that shows that river turn is path and what time. So yes, I depend on published papers for river morphology. And all the best with what you might be doing.
Okay, next, Sri Hari Kumar, thank you. Shyamadev, thank you. Quantum spin. Why, in spite of knowing Ayanansha, we still degrade our own Jyotish in our Bejan Daruwala columns with wrong Sankrantis on 21st and not on 14th?
Okay. Now that's a bit complicated question. See, it depends on what is important to you. Is it the traditional aspect of it that is important to you, or is it the corrected and accurate astronomical, I'm not talking astrology, aspects to you? If you are looking for the day of winter solstice, if you are looking for the shortest day, so to say, then it has to be 21st December, period. The 14th January or 15th January now, by the way, slowly, it will go more towards 15th January, and another 100 plus years, it will be towards 16th January. That has to do with a certain time stamping that happened in the past when people started to talk of winter solstice by aligning it to a specific position of the sun with respect to the Rashi, like entering in a Makar Rashi. That is like saying, Sanjay ji, for our example, like I don't know if that happens in Rajasthan, but in Maharashtra, you see those, what do you call, those flying things with the light, I'm not getting the word right now.
The
Then you said,
fireflies,
fireflies. Then you said the rain is coming,
Jugnu.
right? So you jugno, so you use the fireflies as a signal for rain is coming. Similarly, the sun's entry into the Capricorn was seen as a timing curve for winter solstice. I don't know about this Bejun Darola and so on and so forth, but and forget Ayanamasa. I mean, unless the quantum spin, you have a specific question. Ayanamsha is also made a big deal. Like India has a science system, India has a Nirayan system. Now we have modern astronomy. We can work with latitudes, longitudes, declination, right ascension. There is no confusion. I mean, I'm not expert in astrology. My Ashwini, my wife is, and we have this all discussion. I'm saying everyone asks me about Ayana Amsha. What is the big deal? She said it's not big deal. It's a Nirayan. We see the things the way they are at the time of the birth. Period. That is the Indian system for a long time. That's why it doesn't bother Indian horoscope. The Western horoscope, because they are stuck for this 2000 years, like I'm born on 28th of July, therefore based on that cycle my star sign is Leo, but actually if you see the position when I was born, it was in Cancer, because they have not made the correction for 2000 years. So India, because it's a Nirayan system, it doesn't matter, or at least if it's the issue of Ayana, I am not aware of it, because I don't deal in astrology.
Right. Next one. Namaste, the word Vidyachana. I am making a digital clock based on Bharatiya Kalaganana. Would like to share with you. Can we have a video call?
Okay, well, I mean, Vinayakji did not make it clear whether Sanjayji with you or with me. If it's
With you, of course.
okay, well, if it is with me, I would say I mean, that will be great. But my time, I mean, right now I have so many things on my desk to be completed. I will say, Vinayakji, here is the best way to do it. My email, doctor. So I'm a doctor. No, this is just a humor. Doctor No, DRNO .5561bce@gmail.com. You send me the email there. Be very brief, crisp, and everything. Please go ahead with what you're doing. All the best. And at some point, if you share with that, then we can have a very quick call, if required. But do understand, and I please respect the time, in the sense it's really challenging to really do it. I mean, I get people who wants to do WhatsApp with me, and I tell them, no, please, you cannot do WhatsApp, because I want to go away from WhatsApp. So I don't want to add one more number to the WhatsApp. So we might do if required. Please write in your email what it is about and in what way I can contribute and assist and whatnot. And thank you for whatever you are doing with this.
Okay, next. Parth, namaste. One, please articulate for us why discovery should make us suspicious. How does one learn Indian astronomy? Please suggest texts in English.
Okay, do you want to take the first
I'll,
one?
I'll, I'll take the first one. Uh, that is because, Parth, what you have to do is that you have to go to the doctrine of discovery. Discovery is not what the dictionary meaning of discovery suggests. there is a doctrine of discovery, which is a colonizing and appropriating doctrine. And you can simply Google it and you'll find it. And because it started with one of the popes laying down that doctrine and saying that, okay, the uh, Christian faith is the only true faith. So wherever they go, he sent them on their mission to discover the world, and whatever they discovered, they owned it. So that applied to territory. So they discovered a territory, it became theirs by that doctrine, and the others had no claim. In fact, the US Supreme Court validated that doctrine as late as 19th century to deny the rights of the American natives. It is that pernicious a doctrine. So you have to see not discovery, but the doctrine of discovery, specifically the papal bull, the bull, etc. Right? Bull, etc. In Google, and doctrine of discovery. And then you will find out how pernicious a doctrine it is. And even better, Dr. C.K. Raju has a beautiful video on the doctrine of discovery. I think it is with the your Center of Indic Studies in Indus University, and he has also we did a lot of videos with them, and it is there on one of them as well. So that is what doctrine of discovery is.
Okay,
Yes, the
I'll take
second
the
part.
second one. So how does one learn Indian astronomy? Many ways to do it, but I think there are some ways which are more entertaining, more exciting. And so you can start anywhere, but you said please suggest text in English. I'll say just as a metaphor, if somebody asks like what is the best way to learn say Hindi. Now I understand Tulsidas ji is in Awadhi, not exactly Hindi, but that's actually a better thing. See, sometime I may not understand Hindi word because it is much Urduized too right now. So many Urdu words. But you listen to Tulsidas ji, and such a beautiful. I find many words very close to Marathi in his Tulsi Ramayana.
It is Prakrit grammar and Sanskrit vocabulary basically.
Right. So I would say if you have to, somebody has to learn Hindi, say even from outside. People ask me here, and I say, well, start with Tulsi Ramayana. That's exactly what I tell them, and I'm going through Tulsi Ramayana. Similarly, I would say if you want to understand Indian astronomy, I mean there are many ways to do it, but I would say start with my books. I mean, then you have something interesting to know. Like there are between Ramayana and Mahabharata, there are 800 plus astronomy references, all connected to Indian astronomy. And then go backwards. If you just go to Surya Siddhanta, Arya Bhattiya, it may bore you to death, because it's a technical manual. That's what they are. Extremely technical manual. And they are meant to be used by someone who is already expert in astronomy. By the way, something else, Parji, like as an experiment, I have started on a YouTube, like introduction to Indian calendar. But again, I have to take them people really from the basics. So you may also check out those videos, and I'll be adding more videos there. Introduction to Indian calendar. But pick up my books, start reading them. Then when required, you can download these Indian astronomy texts.
Next. Is it true that swastika is the rotation of Saptarishi constellation in the great year of 25,920 years?
Many people have as a mnemonic, you can say, or just some kind of a beauty. Yes, people have considered the Saptarshi as like at different times of the year, like the 4 times, and then if you draw those, then they look like a swastika. This could be done as a piece of beauty, something to remember. So in the sense of a mnemonics, that's all I can comment. I don't know if truly the concept of swastika came from the Saptarshi. I don't know that.
We have an episode on swastika with Abhijit Chawla.
Okay.
Why don't you look that up, quantum spin?
Very good.
You can look that episode up. He has done a lot of research on that. Next one. Acintyanath Saxena. Professor Amitabh Ghosh, retired director of IIT Kharagpur, has done extensive research on Hindu astronomy. Please invite him also. Okay, thank you for the suggestion. Noted. Quantum spin 21,600 is 10,800 into 2. Number of human breaths in day and night. Pran neti kalam bhu Aryabhatiya. Thank you.
Yeah, and so that was used, by the way, because the breath was used as a measure of time, and that's why you get that formula. It was used as a measure of time.
Next, Gautam Dhargalkar. Namaste, Sanjay ji and Nilesh ji. Did the early Indian astronomers have any knowledge about dark energy or dark matter?
Well, the true answer is I don't know. We don't know. They may or they may not have that knowledge. The specific astronomy aspect, at least that Sanjay ji and I are discussing, you can think of this as in terms of visual astronomy, in terms of calendrical astronomy, in terms of the astronomy that is used for navigational purposes, for predicting agriculture, Ayurveda, and rituals, and so on. So I don't know whether they knew about dark energy or not.
Right. Next one. Satyam, how did Indians develop this vast astronomical knowledge without any instruments like telescopes, satellites?
Okay, so Satyamji, I'll use this to emphasize another point. So the answer is very, very simple to this question, that to think or to assume or to conjecture or to speculate that Indians did not have sophisticated instrument itself is incorrect. Actually, Indians did have sophisticated instruments. The descriptions can be seen in the Surya Siddhanta, for example, but even in the many other texts, indirectly, directly, they are explaining all our ancient Indian narratives. But I'm so glad you also asked this question, because I want to use it quickly for something else. What you will find many times, and this is a very Western Indology style of doing research, which is not even a really research. They already have an agenda and now they want to justify it. Unfortunately, many of our pro-India researchers have also grasped those methodologies. I call this everyone in the matrix. They don't even realize that they are in the matrix. They are following these methods. So what happens? Like the way you ask the question, and I'm just using yours as an illustration. How did Indians develop this vast astronomical knowledge without any instruments like telescopes and satellites? Of course, I'm not claiming they had satellites, but telescopes definitely so. There is a concept of mirrors, okay, Adarsha. In Ramayana, Mahabharata, we are talking 14,000 years of thing. As soon as we talk of mirrors, it doesn't take much to get to the telescopes or microscopes and so on. That is as simple as that. Mahabharata, 7,500 years, talks about the Sukshma Drushti. Okay, it talks about the telescopic vision. It talks about the Sanjay's vision, for example, at a distance. Our Sanjay's vision. so it's already there. My point is, when you ask a question like this, many times what happens is people will jump and try to justify the first portion, like how did Indian try to figure it out, and they might have done this and they might have done that. It may be approximate, it may be samadhi. My point is, the premise on which you are asking the question itself is not correct. The premise being that Indians did not have sophisticated instruments. That itself is wrong. And I'm just using that as an example, that many times when people ask the question, think of, before we as a civilizational folks trying to respond, don't ever be in a hurry to jump to answer the partial question. Check what they are assuming. And many times, and I would say 99.99%, just to give other side the benefit of doubt, I am convinced it's 100%. That is my experience. Their premise is wrong. Same thing with the leftist, communist, everyone. Their premise is wrong. And they want you to believe that that is a fact, and they ask you a question and make you answer. No, don't answer that question. That question has arisen there because they are assuming something which itself is wrong. Question the premise. So my answer is, that's why that should not surprise you. There were sophisticated instruments. And the Indians were very ingenious. Like even simple taking a stick, a vertical stick in the ground, they could do magic. Okay. And this is not limited to Indians. If you go 600 years back, like some of the things that even after discovery aspect that Sanjay ji refers to, even borrowing, even when you borrow something, you have to have your own intelligence. And some of the things still the what likes of Galileo did, or likes of Kepler did, Newton and Faraday. Faraday is like phenomenal model. So is Kepler. I mean, we have to recognize their ingenuity also. So even when borrowed stuff, with some simple instruments, they achieved tremendous stuff. I mean, I have seen the telescope that Newton used. You don't want to even use it. It is that primitive, you might think. But what they achieved, or what Galileo achieved before that, is credit worthy.
Right. Next. Prasad Lime. Rigveda does mention of Rashis, but names are not same. Mithun, Ansrat, Hap, Vrishchik, Singh, Shane, Dhanu. Some are common, others are not.
Yeah, now it is just a comment, Prasad ji. I mean, I don't know if you are specifically referring to, for example, work done by Dr. P.V. Vartak. I mean, he's my great inspiration. I mean, I used to meet him every time I went to Pune, until he passed away 2 years ago. So he has made a very good case for the existence of Rashis, the zodiacs, in Rigveda or through the ancient Indian narratives. He has made a good case. I would truly prefer some additional proof and independent proof coming for those, and that's why I don't necessarily quote his work. But what he has done is tremendous, even with the identification of, because you are using those certain words, and that just tells me you might be referring to that. So that's good, but it's not very decisive. I mean, people can find holes in the sense of they saying, okay, this is a good piece of evidence, where is your triangulation? That could be the challenge with what he has done as of now.
Next. Nilesh, what is the significance of Mount Meru? Dreth Bhagavad Puran having 18 Varsha along with the Bharata. Can we correlate with geography?
Okay, the significance of Mount Meru can be multifold. Sometimes it means a terrestrial North Pole, it can mean a celestial North Pole, and it can mean something as a location on the map. Like, so for example, map can be drawn with Delhi as a center of the whole thing. Map can be drawn with Cairo, Egypt as the center, and map can be drawn with Chicago as the center. So sometimes it is used as a center, sometimes it's a terrestrial North Pole, sometimes it's a celestial North Pole. And quickly about the 18 varshas, that's what I was referring to. So a map might be folded in the past in a certain fashion that divided into these different areas, and they could be called varshas. Can we correlate with geography? One needs to do more research to see if it can be. I have not done the research, and I'm not in the position to answer if it can be correlated.
Okay, next one. Quantum spring again. Nilesh's image is frozen, but we can still hear his voice. Okay. Ayanansh mentioned in Surya Siddhanta is a wobble between plus 27 to minus 27 degrees in Vana Mahayuga. Is this accepted in the modern astronomy?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Although I see my screen being frozen too, but you can hear me,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, you can be heard.
Okay, good. So that's good enough. So what is it? Quantum spin. What you just asked is what we discussed when Sanjay ji asked the question about Dr. Jayashree Sarnathan ji's interpretation of this back and forth model, plus 27 minus 27. Just to repeat, my take on that is a wrong interpretation. There is no empirical, objectively testable basis, druk pratyay, in modern astronomy or ancient astronomy. In fact, there is a sufficient evidence contrary to that, and my conjecture is that maybe few verses are missing, and that's why we cannot make a sense out of it. And some people take it in the fashion that Dr. Jayashree Sarnathan ji has taken. I don't think that's how we should take it, because there is no druk pratyay, there is no pratyaksha praman for that claim.
No? Okay, right. Next one. Chitragupta, do you feel trigonometry should be taught along with astronomy in India as was done back in ancient India?
trigonometry should be taught along with astronomy. I mean, Chitragupta ji, that's a loaded question. I mean, we need to change a lot, So, in fact, I would say, why teach trigonometry along with astronomy? My point is, teach astronomy, and while teaching astronomy, teach trigonometry. Just like I said, why not study Tulsidas ji's Tulsi Ramayan, and in the process learn Hindi.
Next. Shri Harikumar, 28th Nakshatra used to be Muhurt Padvi recent. That is Ram Janambhoomi Puja, as in North India, Muhurta was not suitable.
Okay, so that's a comment. I would say, I don't have a comment on that. 28 Nakshatra, I don't know if they use the Abhijit. But for anything to do with the Rama, the very fact we are doing it, the Rama is auspicious enough as far as I am concerned.
Right. Next one. Niranjan Padak, please explain geography of Aryavart, Jambudvip and Bharatvarsh.
Well, see, these name Aryavarta or Jambudvip or Bharatavarsha have changed over a period of time. So it's like asking a question, Aryavarta of what time, Jambudvip of what time, and Bharatavarsha of what time. Like if you go back, say, 2000 years, and Bharatavarsha, I mean, that possibly ran from Iran all the way to Cambodia or Vietnam. That is not the case today. You can go to the next one.
Okay, next. Mr. Ohori, referring to a previous question, in Mahabharata, the Yavanas and Milichas, they were grandchildren of Yayati.
Very good. That's a good point. And again, I didn't want to digress, but like Druyus are out of India migrations going back to long time. I don't want to put a number, but I'm very comfortable saying possibly 30,000, 40,000 years, or 50,000, 60,000 years, or before that. Then we have Anu migrations. And Amavasu migrations, and the descendants of Amavasus are what you are referring to, Yayati and whatnot. And initially they were called Parshus, Aratta, and Gandharas, which are referring to the area of Afghanistan, Iran, and whatnot. And eventually they also migrated out. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you for adding that. That is correct.
Next. Nipurn Ahuja, with due respect to ancient Indian wisdom, why is it that we were not able to make weapons for self-defense superior to those used by savages from Middle East? The onslaught pushed us thousands of years back.
Superior to those used by savages from Middle East. Okay, the point is, Nipunji, we have not found any weapons from Mahabharata times, 7,500 years ago. Or we have not found the weapons from 14,000 years ago, from Ramayana times. If you also look at the descriptions, there were Astra and Shastra. We might find Shastra sometime, and they may or may not be from those times. But Astra, based on the descriptions, limited description, they were very sophisticated weapons. And sometimes they are nothing to be found. I mean, they were invoked with a mantra, whatever that meant, both in the Ramayana and Mahabharata. So what was the question? Well, we're not able to make weapons for self-defense, superior to those by the savages of the Middle East. Well, we are making now. I mean, if you look at some of the things that are being done, if you look at the space, just recently, Indian Space Organization sent 19 space shuttles, 19 satellites in the orbit. I mean, it's just beating its own records.
Okay, next. Shamadev Mishra. What's your take on E. Burgess' comment on periodic motion on Ayanansha Sadhanam, Chakra Praka Parilambate, as it was a wrong interpretation, and what's your interpretation?
Okay. Quick. So this particular one, I don't know exactly. I mean, I would have to go back to the book and look at it. So Shamdevji, just remember, I mean, your study may be purely on a Surya Siddhanta or stuff like that. My approach, or the very reason I study Indian astronomy, is not for its own sake. I mean, I do this as a useful tool for many other areas like Ayurveda and Itihasa and other stuff that I study. So I'm not into detail, and just off the cuff, I cannot tell you what that is, nor I remember Burgess' interpretation. The point is, just quickly, because you mentioned Burgess, Burgess was French, and this team, it was a transatlantic team which translated Surya Siddhanta. And I would say Burgess was most the closest to the original spirit of Surya Siddhanta. But the whoever the rest of the folks that were on the team had a extremely racist agenda. In fact, they did not allow Burgess to make some of the comments he wanted to make. Whereas Burgess was fascinated by Surya Siddhanta, but the racist crowd, part of that team, did not allow him to make some of the comments. They left him to say whatever he wanted to say in the appendix, and that's why many people don't realize that there was a difference among that team. So some good respect to Burgess. I mean, if it was left to Burgess alone, just like the case with the Scottish mathematician and astronomers, or the French mathematicians and astronomer, who had a great respect for Indian astronomy, but that was kind of lost or almost like turned through 180-degree by British folks as well as the American folks when they translated.
Okay. Ramesh, Namaste Buddhijeevio. Nilesh ji, how are you balancing the antiquity accounting, wobbly oscillation of Earth, and the number of anomalies, expanding moon orbit, and asteroid impacts over millennia that affected Earth's rotation?
Yeah.
That's a
Well,
proper
Ramesh,
astrophysics question, actually.
well, I don't know, Sanjay ji, what he's asking. I think I'm making sense out of it. These are all the wild speculations that are made by, I mean, every day some new wild speculation made by Dr. Jayashree Sarnathan. That's, I think, what he's referring to. In fact, very recently somebody sent something to me from I forgot now, her blog or something, where she's saying during the Mahabharata time, the full moon of Kartika happened, and before the next month comes, some comet came and hit the moon and threw the moon backwards by those many degrees. So therefore, there was a Kartika twice. So I presume, Rameshji, that's what you're referring to. Hey, we need all the players. In a drama, we need all the different characters. In the movie, we need all different characters. Think of it like that. We should enjoy this. I mean, it's a manthan. Manthan produces both amrut and a visha, and we have to learn to deal with both.
Prakash Vinakal, Nilesh ji, superb.
Thank you.
Next. Pramod Parke, importance of medical astrology, as Charak has emphasized Ritucharya as per season, and also the synapse of physical, metaphysical, and astral body.
Yeah, is this a question, like importance of? Yeah, so
it's more of a comment, though.
Comment, yeah. I agree with it. Now, as far as I'm concerned, to me, it's a bit of an experimental that I am working with some of them. Some wonderful Ayurveda Charya that I'm working with. If you see me interviewing them at the Waves conference, like Vaidya Parikshit Ji Shevde, Vaidya Madhuri Patil, and then Vaidya Pradyumna. And they're doing just amazing work. I mean, through these tough COVID times also, but otherwise in a very Druk Pratyay kind of thing, empirical type of research. As to the impact of astrology on it, I mean, they understand it. To me, I feel like we should do additional experimentation, or at least save the data to get more insights into it. Thank you.
Okay, next. Priya, Surya Siddhanta book, which writer ki read kare?
Priya ji, there is no one particular writer, but suppose आपने हिंदी में question पूछा, तो if you go to archive.org, you will able to download a Hindi translation also. मुझे एकदम नाम नहीं आ रहा है, like श्रीवास्तव या ऐसा कुछ नाम है, but if you just look through Surya Siddhanta with a translation, Hindi translation also, you'll get English translation. You can download Burgess, the Hindi translation. Keep that in mind. No matter which translation you download, you have to keep your own rational mind out, because all of these people, including ourselves, we are trying to understand Surya Siddhanta. No one can claim that he or she has perfectly understood Surya Siddhanta to this day. Just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Next, Vishal. So, is there any point in going for masters in astronomy in Western universities? They seem to have no regards for Indian astronomy.
I would say, Vishalji, why just Western universities? You have to be very careful where you do masters in astronomy, Eastern or Western or Indian universities. Many times I have met many, why just masters in astronomy? I have met, or actually I run into PhDs in astronomy. Okay. And with all due respect to them, by respect for the fact that they spend time doing the masters or PhD, many times it is on an extremely trivial subject, or when you talk to them for some time, like I'm a self-taught astronomer and I can say I only know 1% of it, but I still find that what I know is 1,000 times more than they know. Okay, so just be very careful where you do your masters or where you do your PhD and what's your motivation. Thank you.
Next. क्या रामायण महाभारत की कालावधि के बारे में बताएंगे? तो बहुत लंबा सब्जेक्ट है.
बहुत लंबा सब्जेक्ट, बट मैं शॉर्ट में आंसर देता हूं जो आपको पता है. महाभारत इन 5561 BC, रामायण इन 12,209 BC. थैंक यू. आप जरूर मेरे बुक पढ़िए, so.
Yes, and also the episodes on Mahabharata and Ramayana dating on Jaipur dialogues.
Yeah, we have done on Jaipur dialogue. We spent a whole day one time, so.
What's the starting reference point of Var Chakra?
Yeah, if you are asking starting reference point in the sense of when it began, we truly don't know. If you are asking what is considered the first day, just based on the formula that is given in Surya Siddhanta or Aryabhatiya, it will be Saturday, because that is the slowest planet as seen from the Earth.
Next. Nitesh Apte, please consider this question. This is my second question till now. I have paid earlier 5,000. You didn't need to pay 5,000 for asking a question. You can ask for 100 rupees also.
Right.
I'm not able to pay now because my monthly international transaction limit is finished because I donate to DO politics. And please, what is the question?
Yeah.
We don't see the question. A desk, please find out the question that he wants to ask. We will answer it. Next.
Okay, good.
Oh.
Okay. Nitesh ji, I mean, if we can find, great. Or he can ask when this video is since there, he can ask in the comments.
No, he can write to us in email, and I will source the answer from Nilesh ji and give it to him. Not a problem at all. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this. See one more question coming up from Vishal. Can you put it on? Can you put it on the screen, desk? Okay, so is there a connection between Mount Kailash and previous 27 Manvantaras? Are there any other evidences of previous Manvantaras? Who is Vaivasvata?
Okay, I have to make it short. Vishalji, I like your ingenuity to pack like many questions into one. Is there a connection between Mount Kailash and previous 27 Manvantaras? No, there is no connection between the two, or at least there is no connection that I am aware of, to be safe side. Okay, are there any other evidence of previous Manvantaras? Of course, there is a evidence of previous Manvantaras. The challenge is how big is a Manvantar? And we have this challenge, just like we have a question, the challenge on how big are yugas and so on and so forth. Last one, who is Vaivashvata? Vaivashvata Manu is another prominent individual. Okay, it is so prominent that we considered like starting another kalpa, epoch, whatever you want to call it, from him. So that Vaivashvata Manu is in Bhagavad Puran is referred to as a Dravideshwar. That like he was like a king of a south, you can say, Dravideshwar, like connected with the ocean. That's what we know. In terms of some indirect study that I have done, we can definitely put his time before 30,000 BC. That's all I can tell you, but how far before, I have no idea whatsoever.
Next. I think that brings us to the end of the questions and answers session. So we have to thank all the viewers, and I have to thank Nilesh Oak ji very profusely and he has managed to go through the. Okay, Nitesh Apte's question comes up. How can we use Vedic science in computer science?
Okay, that's a very generic sort of a question, Niteshji. I don't mean loaded in the sense you have deliberately done it, but what you want to do in computing science, that will decide what can be done. And even if you would have specified the question, Niteshji, it's not to say that immediately either Sanjayji or I would have a ready-made answer for that. I mean, do recognize some of these things takes tapa, literally the tapa, like 12 years and 10 years to figure it out. So again, I would say if you do have a specific questions like further broken down, you can send it to Jaipur Dialogues and we may find a way to answer it. But at this level, how can I don't know. If your question was, can we use Vedic science in computer science? Generically, I would say, I think more than likely, but it needs to be much more precise question in order for us even to answer, assuming we know the answer.
Okay. Uh, so is that the final
Yeah.
question? Okay. Thank you all viewers. Please like the video, subscribe the channel, press the bell icon, uh, make your contributions if you will. And thank you, Nilesh, even though your picture is frozen, but your eloquence has carried the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful having you.
Thank you.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.